XRP only needs to be used for one use case in order to succeed in the long run. That's all. Why would somebody throw something away after using it for one purpose? Additionally, don't you believe that more people will speculate about it if they don't throw it away? Don't you think that cryptocurrency will eventually gain a share of the market as more individuals want to diversify their wealth? Of course, of course. Therefore, it's evident to me that even if XRP has only one application, it's a huge success. You do. That would suffice. Over its lifespan, however, we have witnessed the development of several use cases, not just one. It's among the most practical cryptocurrencies ever developed, particularly in the last several years. As time goes on, we continue to see more success, which confirms our suspicion that XRP was an early winner in the cryptocurrency sector.
It couldn't be clearer. Furthermore, the rate at which RLUSD, or Ripple's stablecoin, is gaining traction has, in my opinion, exceeded most people's expectations thus far. In actuality, its market capitalization is currently quite near 100. I'll pull it up shortly. I believe it's at 103. However, consider this. Market capitalization ranges from 100 to 103 out of tens of thousands of coins. Furthermore, it wasn't launched until the end of 2024. Since RLUSD cannot exist and conduct transactions on the XRP ledger without XRP, that is great news for XRP holders. It's programmed that way. Additionally, Ripple, SBI, and Gemini have all reported increasing use today.
Sunday seemed like a good day to revisit a position that has been overtly anti-XRP for almost 10 years. And to be honest, they have suddenly, unexpectedly, fully embraced XRP. This is something you'll want to hear about. I want to begin by bringing up this article. It's entitled, "Here's XRP Price If XRP Ledger Secures 20% of the Tokenized Real-World Assets by 2026." And I must admit that attempting to predict the price of XRP by following this route is a fool's errand, because supply and demand dynamics from speculators are not related to the quantity of utility and XRP bouncing around for utility purposes. Price is usually driven by speculators. Price is always determined by human behavior. But what about the bots is a valid point. Yes, all right, but who sets those? Who sets the parameters for the bots? People. Yes. Exactly. The dynamics of supply and demand for XRP are always determined by individuals. It has always been this way and always will be. And from what I can tell, that's good. Therefore, it is not true that the market capitalization of the items tokenized on the XRP ledger is equivalent to the market capitalization of XRP, even if a large number of items are tokenized on the XRP ledger. This isn't how it operates. Those are two different things. In contrast to XRP, which has its own market cap, the tokens on the XRP ledger have their own market caps, of course. This should go without saying, yet even in 2025, I seem to have to say it. However, you are exempt if you are new to cryptocurrency. You're learning, all right? It's all right. You've arrived at the ideal location. However, I will not even attempt to read this article. There's no point in diving into specifics. It will veer too far out of control. It would take a long time if I tried to do a comprehensive breakdown of how foolish this is. However, it is foolish. I wanted to briefly explain why I believe this to be utterly foolish. However, they did reach this conclusion. It appears that they use artificial intelligence to determine that XRP may hit 134.50 cents. Now, just because this is a dumb method of attempting to predict XRP's future value doesn't mean that it can't have triple digits in the future. I won't make any predictions. I don't think that's ridiculous, but I'm not sure if it will happen. Particularly if you're not establishing a deadline, because you can't predict how long the adoption will take. The possibility that XRP will have triple-digit price action at some point in the future is not at all outlandish. Though, if we are correct and it remains one of the most widely used and beneficial cryptocurrencies in history. Although I'm not sure if that will occur, I am aware that speaking in such a manner is not insane. Let me offer you an alternative, something more sensible than trying to figure out how much XRP would be worth by looking at the market capitalization of other coins that aren't XRP. This approach doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure about you people. In my opinion, if enough time passes, the value of the cryptocurrency asset class will surpass $100 trillion. It is now valued at about $4 trillion. It will easily reach above $100 trillion in my opinion. Even though it could take some time, I am convinced that we will eventually reach our goal. The cryptocurrency asset class is still in its infancy, and that's why we have so many opportunities. Comparing cryptocurrency to other asset classes, there isn't much money in it. To generate insane multiplication effects, it simply needs a lot of money to pour in. This is the reason it works. Here's a straightforward perspective on this. This is a solid argument if, like me, you firmly believe in cryptocurrency and that its asset class will be valued at more than $100 trillion. This makes sense, in my opinion, as to why XRP might reach those triple-digit price points, which, once more, I'm not forecasting. Admittedly, I'm not positive if it will actually occur. I do believe it is feasible, but that would be too far off. That seems really safe to me. Naturally, XRP is one of the most practical cryptocurrencies ever developed. So let me just say this. At $83 per share, XRP isn't a hope. It's just math if the cryptocurrency industry reaches $100 trillion. Here is the breakdown then. Come hang out with me. It might be a bit lower if XRP maintains its present 5% market share in the cryptocurrency space, but let's use round numbers to make calculations easier. In a scenario where the market capitalization of the crypto asset class is $100 trillion, XRP would have a $5 trillion market cap if it only maintains its 5% market share of the crypto market. Divide that $5 trillion by the roughly 60 billion XRP that are in use. I'm aware that it's a little lower now. It's easier if you just use round figures. And you get about $83 per coin if you do that. That's all. Therefore, avoid using convoluted tokenization models, which are pointless. I'm telling you this because what's on your screen here doesn't make any sense. What I'm providing is that I'm not using any complex tokenization models in my calculations. Future demand cannot be predicted. The reasoning is straightforward. As the cryptocurrency market expands, XRP maintains its 5% share. That same $5 trillion market capitalization would now be closer to $50 rather than $83 if supply gradually approaches the entire $100 billion. If the circulating supply rises, that is undoubtedly the case. However, what if XRP holds a far bigger market share? Let's say that XRP's usefulness rises even more, reaching a 20% market share instead of 5%. It has, incidentally, had above 30% in the past, albeit briefly. However, what if it could maintain a share of even almost 20%? Isn't that a big thing? Look, if that's the case, the price per XRP may range from $200 to about $332, depending on the amount in circulation. That would be significant. As I mentioned before, it's also possible that the value of the crypto asset class may eventually surpass $100 trillion. That is definitely feasible in my opinion. Consequently, those XRP values would rise even further. Therefore, it's not strange when people start discussing these large amounts if you're talking about the future. Simply put, I don't discuss it much because it won't happen anytime soon. However, is this something that might occur if you're speaking without a set timeline in mind? I do think it's definitely feasible. Yes, XRP is one of the most practical coins available, as long as it remains functional as it simply works. It's also among the pioneers in the field. Without a doubt, it has a significant edge. That being said, it might be worth a lot more than that. This, in my opinion, perfectly captures the idea that if you are seeing this video in 2025, you are really early to invest in XRP. You're really early. Additionally, I wanted to quickly draw attention to a few other facts that have emerged in the last few days. First off, according to CoinMarketCap, RLUSD is presently ranked 103rd in terms of market capitalization. And once more, a year ago, this currency did not exist. Last December, it was launched, and observe what's taking place. The adoption in the actual world has arrived. This is the headline from a few days ago's Crypto Basic. The RLUSD debut in Japan has been confirmed by SBI and Ripple. SBI Holdings and Ripple are getting ready to launch RLUSD in Japan. SBI VC Trade is in charge of distribution for the nation's recently regulated stablecoin market, which is the target of the action. A memorandum of understanding has been signed between Ripple and SBI Holdings to introduce RLUSD to Japan, the business said in an official statement released earlier today. The deal is the business's most recent partnership in digital finance. So consider this. Why is there a market cap? Yes, all right, the current market capitalization of RLUSD is $686 million. Once more, it was zero because it didn't exist a year ago. Now it stands at $686 million. I'm aware that it's on multiple chains now, of course, but XRP is a part of this, and for this to work, XRP is necessary. This would be sufficient to support XRP's existence, even if it were its sole objective. However, as you are aware, XRP has many more applications than that. However, I'm only emphasizing this here. All of that occurred while serving as the engine for the XRP ledger, which has been widely used to tokenize a variety of assets, such as gold, money market funds, and treasury bills. All of that is current on the XRP ledger. Since Bitcoin is too cumbersome and slow, XRP actually moves Bitcoin on the XRP ledger, which is a tokenized version of it. Since Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency ever made, it is technically the worst cryptocurrency ever made. Thus, it is fixed by the XRP ledger. It accelerates it to the same speed as XRP. Tokenizing Bitcoin is a great idea. It is done by a business named Spin the Bits. It simply functions. This is what a live company is doing today. You do realize that this isn't a science experiment. There are numerous reasons why this is effective, but here's just one more. And because Ripple is trustworthy and open about how RLUSD is supported by the Genius Act, it just keeps being more and more embraced. In the United States, which has the world's largest capital market, the system is now well regulated. The adoption rate will continue to rise, which indicates that XRP's long-term viability is becoming increasingly certain. Here, we simply continue in that way. And then there's this. A major development for XRP is hinted at by Gemini, the leading US exchange. All right, this is from a few days ago then. Gemini then released a teaser, which caused the XRP community to start using social media extensively once more.
They do something like that. I found the post here. The official Gemini cryptocurrency exchange is the source of this. The number of followers is 591,000. Anyway, the following is the content of this post. If you look at the screen, you can readily see that the next era of rewards is getting ready to debut with the capital letters XRP. Many people assumed that this was a hint about another reward scheme like their previous faucet giveaways or XRP cashback program, and their estimates were reasonable enough. Since listing XRP in 2023, Gemini has promoted it very consistently. Thus, it demonstrated that the exchange still finds value in maintaining XRP at the core of their marketing initiatives. Well done, to be honest. We now understand exactly what Gemini was hinting at. The credit card is called XRP. Check out this article from Coin Central. The XRP-themed credit card's launch date is announced by Gemini. People, if there weren't a real need for this kind of thing, they wouldn't do this. In their opinion, XRP makes sense. They did this with XRP, but they don't do this with all coins. And it comes after they detested XRP for almost 10 years. As far as I know, they are the only US exchange that did not list XRP before the SEC v. Ripple litigation. After the litigation concluded in 2023, they listed XRP for the first time. Thus, they have hated and resented XRP. It's definitely true, but they've changed their minds now. Therefore, look at this. In an effort to reward XRP holders, Gemini has disclosed its intentions to introduce a new credit card with an XRP theme. The card is scheduled for distribution on August 19, 2025, and the exchange announced the news on social media. Gemini's action follows the launch of an XRP rewards program by the exchange earlier in March, which enabled XRP holders to receive cash back using Gemini's pre-existing credit card. It is anticipated that the card, which targets the XRP community exclusively, will provide up to 4% cash back on purchases made by XRP holders. This is really awesome. Plus, you get 4% XRP on anything you buy. Not too awful. I mean, the card is not with me. I'm not endorsing it in any way. I have no further knowledge of it. It might be a good chance. It might not be. To be clear, I am not giving you instructions or urging you to take any action. Just leave this alone. To put it simply, that does sound enticing in terms of the percentage. Thoughtful. Why not an XRP which steadily increases in value over time if you're going to receive rewards, as long as we remain correct? Anyway, I'm just expressing that, considering their prolonged hatred of XRP, I think it's pretty darn awesome. They appear to have joined the party, nevertheless. They now agree with our viewpoint and acknowledge that XRP is undoubtedly here to stay. Nothing could be clearer than that.